Have you ever stood in your kitchen, pill bottle in hand, wondering if all these medications are really helping, or if they might be doing more harm than good? You trust your doctors, your pharmacists, and those familiar names on the labels. Maybe you've been taking the same little white tablet for years, never questioning it because, well, it's what you've always done. But what if I told you that a few of those pills, ones that seem harmless, might quietly be increasing your risk of memory loss, confusion, or even dementia? Now, before you worry, this isn't about panic. This is about power. The power that comes from knowing the facts. The truth is, some of the most common medications used by people over 60 have been linked by neurologists and researchers to cognitive decline. These aren't experimental drugs or rare prescriptions. These are the medications found in medicine cabinets all across America, maybe even yours. Today, we're going to walk through 4 categories of pills that could be affecting your brain more than you realize. And we're not just naming them. We're going to talk about how they work, why they're prescribed so often, what the risks are, and what you can do instead to stay both physically and mentally strong. Because knowledge isn't just power, it's peace of mind. Let's begin with something so many people over 60 struggle with: sleep. As we age, getting a full night's rest often becomes more challenging. Maybe you wake up at 3 a.m. and can't fall back asleep, or you toss and turn until sunrise. It's frustrating, exhausting, and sometimes even lonely. That's why so many turn to sleep aids or sedatives to get some much-needed rest. But there's a catch. Many of these sleep aids, particularly a class of drugs known as benzodiazepines, were never designed for long-term use in older adults. These medications work by calming the nervous system, helping you relax, unwind, and drift off to sleep. At first, they seem like a godsend. You take the pill, and finally, you sleep. But over time, the brain starts to rely on that chemical support. Natural sleep patterns get disrupted. Worse, studies have shown that prolonged use of these medications can lead to memory problems, confusion, and even a significantly increased risk of developing dementia. Let me tell you about George. He's a retired high school teacher from Florida, 76 years old. After his wife passed, George had a hard time sleeping. His doctor prescribed a benzodiazepine to help him through those tough nights. It worked well at first. He could sleep without waking up constantly. But months passed, and George began to feel a little off. He'd forget appointments, lose track of conversations, and sometimes feel disoriented in familiar places like the grocery store or the park near his home. At first, he thought, well, this must just be what getting older feels like. But his daughter, Lisa, noticed the changes and encouraged him to speak with his doctor. After reviewing his medications, the doctor confirmed that the long-term use of the sleep aid could be contributing to George's cognitive fog. They created a plan to gradually reduce the medication while introducing natural sleep techniques and gentle evening routines. Over the next few months, George began to feel more alert, more present, and more like himself. What happened to George isn't rare. These medications are commonly prescribed because sleep is essential, but so is brain health. And the older we get, the longer these drugs stay in our systems, meaning even a small dose can have a stronger effect. They can also increase the risk of falls, which for seniors can be life-changing. That's why it's so important to talk openly with your healthcare provider if you're using sleep medications regularly. There may be safer alternatives out there that still help you rest, but without dulling your mind. Now, while we're on the topic of sleep, let's talk about something many people assume is totally safe, because it's sold over the counter. Those nighttime pain relievers you can grab at any drugstore. The ones labeled PM that promise to ease your backache and help you sleep soundly. They might seem like a gentle solution, but there's more going on beneath the surface. Over-the-counter pain relievers with PM in the name often contain diphenhydramine or other sedating antihistamines. These ingredients are what make you feel drowsy. They're effective, yes, but they also come with side effects that can creep in quietly over time. For people over 60, these sedatives can increase the risk of confusion, blurred thinking, and long-term memory issues. And because these medications don't require a prescription, many folks take them night after night, without realizing they're slowly affecting the brain's ability to function clearly. Let me introduce you to Robert. He's 74 and lives in Texas. A former auto mechanic, Robert spent decades working with his hands, and now arthritis is a daily part of life. To help manage the pain and get some sleep, he'd been taking an over-the-counter PM pain reliever almost every night. At first, it seemed to work just fine, but slowly, his wife began noticing small changes. He'd misplace his keys, forget conversations, and sometimes repeat stories he'd already told that same day. They both brushed it off until one day Robert forgot how to get to their daughter's house, a place he'd driven to for years. That was the wake-up call. They sat down with their doctor, who pointed out that the diphenhydramine in his nightly pills could be playing a bigger role than they realized. With guidance, Robert tapered off the PM pills and explored other options for pain relief, including physical therapy, stretching routines, and natural sleep hygiene habits like avoiding late caffeine and screen time. Over time, his clarity began to return. He still has arthritis, of course, but his mind feels sharper, and he's confident behind the wheel again. This is what many people don't realize. Just because a pill is sold without a prescription doesn't mean it's safe for daily use, especially for seniors. Our bodies change. Our brains become more sensitive to sedatives, and the risks that might not exist for someone in their 30s or 40s can be very real once we're in our 60s and beyond. The bottom line is, every pill, whether it's over-the-counter or prescribed, carries effects, both good and bad. The more we understand those effects, the better we can protect what matters most: our independence, our memories, and our peace of mind. You have the right to ask questions. You have the right to explore alternatives. You have the right to say, is there a safer way? And just like George and Robert, you might discover that making a small change can bring back a sense of clarity and control you didn't even know you'd lost. Now that we've uncovered how sleep aids and even common over-the-counter PM medications can quietly chip away at our memory and clarity, let's take a closer look at another group of pills that may be doing something similar, only this time they're tied directly to our emotions. Let's talk about antidepressants. Now, before we go any further, I want to be very clear. Depression is real, and getting help is not only brave, it's necessary. So if you're on an antidepressant, don't feel ashamed or nervous. But like everything else, it's important to know that not all medications are created equal, especially as we get older. There's a particular group of antidepressants called tricyclic antidepressants that have been around for decades. These older medications were groundbreaking in their time and helped many people through deeply painful chapters in their lives. They're still prescribed today, especially because they can be less expensive and more familiar to some healthcare providers. But here's the concern. Tricyclic antidepressants work by altering the brain's balance of chemicals like serotonin and norepinephrine, neurotransmitters that help regulate our mood. And while this can help lift someone out of a dark place emotionally, it can also come with some unwelcome side effects when used long-term, especially in people over 60. We're talking about symptoms like forgetfulness, foggy thinking, slower reaction time, and confusion. For someone younger, these side effects might pass or go unnoticed. But for an older adult, especially someone already vulnerable to memory changes, these effects can be magnified and sometimes mistaken for early dementia. Let me share the story of Margaret, a 68-year-old retired nurse from California. After losing her husband unexpectedly, she struggled with overwhelming sadness, difficulty sleeping, and isolation. Her doctor prescribed a tricyclic antidepressant to help her cope. And in the beginning, it helped her get through the toughest days. She could finally rest and feel a little more like herself. But over time, Margaret noticed she was having trouble focusing. She'd go into a room and forget why. She started losing track of conversations and misplacing important paperwork. At first, she blamed it on grief or aging. But deep down, she sensed something wasn't quite right. When she eventually saw a new doctor who reviewed her full medication list, they had a heart-to-heart about her antidepressant. The doctor explained that while the medicine had served a valuable purpose during her grief, its long-term use could be contributing to her mental fuzziness. With her doctor's support, Margaret slowly transitioned to a newer generation antidepressant that had fewer cognitive side effects. Over time, her mind felt clearer, her memory sharper, and she began to re-engage with activities she had lost interest in. What Margaret experienced is not unusual. Many doctors still prescribe older antidepressants because they work well for some people and are more affordable, especially for those on fixed incomes. But for seniors, the balance between emotional wellness and cognitive health becomes much more delicate. The very medication helping with sadness or anxiety might also be dimming the spark in your mind. This doesn't mean you should stop taking your medication. Not at all. What it does mean is that if you're noticing changes in your memory or thinking, it's worth having a thoughtful, compassionate conversation with your doctor. Ask, could this medication be affecting my brain? Then explore your options together. It might be a lower dose, a newer type of medication, or even combining medication with talk therapy or group support. The goal isn't to feel less. It's to feel better without giving up your mental clarity. You deserve both. You can have peace in your heart and sharpness in your mind. Now, the last group of pills we need to talk about might surprise you. These aren't just in prescriptions. They're in cold medications, allergy remedies, bladder control pills, and even some sleep aids. They belong to a class called anticholinergics, and they're everywhere. Anticholinergic medications work by blocking a neurotransmitter in your brain called acetylcholine. This chemical is essential for learning, memory, and other cognitive functions. When you block acetylcholine, especially over long periods, it can lead to memory issues, confusion, and in some cases, increased risk of dementia. The real concern here is how common these medications are. They're used to treat allergies, overactive bladder, insomnia, even irritable bowel issues. Many people don't even realize they're taking one, let alone several. This stacking effect, taking multiple medications that all have anticholinergic properties, can slowly accumulate in the brain, making you feel more forgetful or mentally sluggish without knowing why. I want to tell you about Dorothy, a 72-year-old grandmother from Michigan. She'd been having issues with allergies and frequent nighttime trips to the bathroom. Her doctor prescribed a popular antihistamine and a bladder control pill, both of which had anticholinergic effects. Over time, Dorothy began noticing that she was becoming more forgetful. She had trouble focusing when reading her favorite books and would often lose track of her train of thought in conversations. Like so many others, she thought, maybe this is just what happens when you get older. But one day, during a medication review at her local pharmacy, a sharp-eyed pharmacist noticed the combination she was taking. She encouraged Dorothy to talk to her doctor about the cognitive risks. Together, they found alternative medications with fewer anticholinergic effects. And within weeks of making the change, Dorothy started feeling more alert and mentally present. It was a quiet shift, but a powerful one. This is the piece of the puzzle many people are missing. These drugs aren't labeled with bright warning signs. You won't see "may cause memory loss" in big red letters on the label, but the science is there. Neurologists and researchers have been sounding the alarm for years. Long-term use of anticholinergics can harm your brain, especially later in life. That's why it's so important to sit down with a healthcare provider. Whether it's your doctor, your pharmacist, or even a nurse at your local clinic, and go over every medication you're taking, prescription or over-the-counter. You don't have to know all the chemical names. Just bring the bottles and ask, "Do any of these affect my memory? Are there safer options?" That one question could make all the difference. No one wants to feel like they're losing their sharpness. No one wants to feel like they're slipping away from themselves. But what if the answer isn't just in your brain? What if it's in your medicine cabinet? You don't have to face these changes alone. And you don't have to settle for foggy thinking or confusion as your new normal. With the right information, the right conversations, and the right support, you can protect your memory, your clarity, and your independence for years to come. Let's take a deep breath together right now. You've already done something powerful just by listening, learning, and asking questions. And that's how change begins, with awareness. So here we are. We've walked together through 4 types of medications that, while commonly used, could have a lasting impact on how clearly we think, how well we remember, and how confidently we navigate our daily lives. But before we wrap up, I want to slow things down a bit. Not to go over the science again, but to talk about what all of this really means for you. Because this isn't just about pills or prescriptions. It's about dignity. It's about staying sharp and strong as you age. It's about protecting the most precious parts of who you are. Your memories, your conversations, your stories, your ability to connect with the people you love. For so many of us, taking medications becomes part of the daily rhythm. Morning coffee, vitamins, a few pills from that weekly organizer. You do it without even thinking because it's what you've been told to do. You trust your doctor. You trust the label. You trust that someone's watching out for you. But here's the truth. No one knows your body like you do. And while your healthcare team absolutely wants the best for you, they're human too. Sometimes they miss things. Sometimes they don't know every detail about how all your medications interact. That's why it's so important for you to be in the driver's seat. Not alone, but in partnership with your doctor, your pharmacist, your family. Start with a conversation. Set aside 20 minutes. Bring all your medications with you. Yes, even the over-the-counter ones. Even the ones that seem harmless. Lay them out on the table and say, "Can we take a look at these together? I just want to make sure nothing I'm taking could be affecting my memory or brain health." That one question, it could protect you for years to come. And if you're worried about bringing it up, don't be. You're not being difficult. You're being smart. You're doing exactly what someone who wants to live well into their 70s, 80s, and 90s should do. Being curious, being proactive, being brave enough to say, "Let's make sure I'm taking the best care of my brain, not just my body." Because cognitive health, your ability to think clearly, remember names, stay focused, solve problems, that's everything. That's what allows you to remain independent. That's what keeps your conversations flowing and your stories alive. That's what helps you keep driving, cooking, laughing, and living life the way you want. Maybe you're someone who hasn't noticed any memory changes yet, and that's wonderful. But prevention matters. The steps you take today can help you stay sharp tomorrow. Or maybe you have started to feel a little more forgetful lately. Maybe you've been blaming it on aging or stress or poor sleep. But what if, just maybe, it's something that can be adjusted? Something in your medication list that could be gently swapped, lowered, or removed altogether? You deserve answers. You deserve options. And you deserve to feel heard when you bring this up. So many people think memory loss is inevitable. that once you start forgetting things, there's no turning back. But that's simply not true. There are so many cases, real people, just like you, who've made small changes and found their clarity again, who've stopped feeling like they're disappearing behind a fog, who've gotten back to enjoying their books, remembering their grandkids' birthdays, following a conversation with ease. It's not magic. It's not a miracle. It's just paying attention to what goes into your body and giving your brain the support it needs to thrive. Now, I want to leave you with a little encouragement. You've taken the time to learn something important today. That shows strength. That shows self-respect. That shows you're not someone who's just going to accept decline as your fate. You're someone who's still growing, still curious, still fighting for the best version of your life. And that inspires me. So I want to invite you to take one small step today. Maybe that step is making an appointment with your doctor. Maybe it's bringing your medications to your next pharmacy visit and asking a few questions. Maybe it's writing down some of the names we've discussed. Sleep aids, PM pain relievers, older antidepressants, anticholinergic medications, and checking your own medicine cabinet. Whatever that step looks like for you, just take it. Because the goal here isn't to scare you. It's to empower you. It's to help you stay in control of your health, not feel confused by it. And no matter your age, your history, or your current health status, it is never too late to take charge of your mind and protect the life you love. If you found this video helpful, please take a second to give it a thumbs up. That tells us you want more content like this. And if you haven't already, I'd be honored if you subscribe to this channel, Strong Elderly Life, and turned on notifications. We're building a space here where seniors can come for support, truth, and tools to thrive, not just survive, in the later years of life. And now, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below and tell me, what stood out to you most from this video? Was there something you learned that surprised you? Are you thinking of taking a closer look at your own medications? Your stories matter. Your voice matters. And when you share your experience, you just might help someone else who's going through the same thing. Thank you so much for watching, for learning, and for standing up for your own well-being. Here's to living your best life, with clarity, confidence, and a mind that stays as strong as your spirit. We'll see you next time. Take care.